All right, welcome back to Top 25 Voter Pod. With me, as always, is my good friend and colleague, John Werner. He's below me today on the totem pole on my screen. John, how you doing? Freshly shorn John Werner.
Yeah, I wanted to look good when I went to Manhattan, Kansas on Tuesday, and I think I passed the test. I'm not sure.
Okay, good deal. If your wife approves, that's all that matters.
That's all right.
And back with us, I say back with us, so we have a couple different podcasts. We have our One True podcast where we talk college football, Big 12 football, and Kelly was with us last fall. And glad to have Kelly Hines of the Tulsa World back with us. But now we're talking college basketball, and I've already promised Kelly that we give her a reprieve from talking about Tulsa basketball because they're not doing so well right now.
It's not going well. Let's just say that.
Yeah. But Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been there at Tulsa for 15 years. Doing your thing, a lot of different beats, and even this college basketball season have been on a couple different beats.
Yeah, I mean, going back to last January, I've been moved around quite a bit, but I'm actually starting next week. I'll be covering Oral Roberts a little bit, and that's obviously a good team that could be playing a lot in March. So so I'm very excited about the remainder of the basketball season. It's just been a journey to this point.
And Kelly does vote on go ahead, John.
Say hello to Paul Mills for me.
Oh, Paul is a very good guy.
Yeah, no doubt. Does a good job there at ORU. Kelly does vote on the men's top 25 poll, as does John. I vote on the women's. Makes a lot of sense for the name of the podcast. So there we go. Let's talk some college basketball. So Houston moved back into the number one spot this past week in the top 25 in the men's poll. It's the fifth week this season that the Cougars have been at number one. We've also seen North Carolina. They started out the year at number one, not so much anymore. We've had Purdue, we've had Alabama. Holding that one spot for various times this season. So it feels to me like it's another year where, there's no clear cut like favorite out there. So as of today, and obviously we are closing in on March, who would y'all's teams be that would be kind of that most likely to cut down the nets team? And what are the odds that team comes out of the Big 12 for the third straight year? Kelly, I'll start with you.
Man, I love that Houston team. Having covered the American for several years and seeing them up close, like this is Kelvin Sampson's best team there. I think that they have everything they need. I think it's a tough, gritty team, like it always is. Always going to be exceptionally good rebounding team. They do the little things. I do have some concern about coming out of the American and maybe not being challenged as much there as, you look at Purdue and literally everyone in the Big 12. I feel like they're maybe more equipped for a deep run, but it's hard to count out Kelvin Sampson. So, any chance there's like just doing the poll each week when I'm like weighing Houston another team, like I tend to give the edge to Houston. I just feel like they're a very complete team. They beat Oral Roberts by like 40 points and Oral Roberts is a great team. It's just they're the American being down this year. I don't think that's helping Houston in terms of preparation, but I really like Purdue. I really like Kansas and Baylor and Texas. You could go down the list, Kansas State, Iowa State, you could go down the list in the Big 12. So really any of those Big 12 teams, I feel like they are going to have a chance once you get to the tournament.
John Boyd.
I agree with Kelly. I think Houston's got a great team. They've got a lot of great postseason experience the last couple of years. And like she said, they're a heck of a rebounding team. And they play good defense. They're really athletic. Guys like Marcus Sasser, Darius Walker, Juwan Roberts, just very talented guys. I think they've got a pretty good bench. Then as far as the other teams, I think Alabama's just got too many off-field issues.
Yeah.
I think that's going to sink them. There's just too many bad vibes going around that program. I think Kansas has a shot again, but I just don't think their bench is deep enough. If Grady Dick or Jalen Wilson is off a night, I don't think they have the bench to cover them this year. Purdue, they probably have the player of the year in Zach Edey, 7'4" guy, has had a great year. I don't think they have the guards, though, to stack up to some teams. I think UCLA is a really good team. As far as Baylor, they just do not play good enough defense, I think, to get, they might could get to a Final Four if a lot of breaks went their way, and they obviously have great shooters, but boy, their defense I don't know, it might be the worst I've seen Scott have in, I would say, at least 5 years or something like that, or maybe longer, probably since that 18 team. But I'm going with Kelly on Houston. I just like that team.
If Houston wins, can the Big 12 claim them? I mean, they're going to be in the Big 12 soon enough.
Right. I think that just makes that's going to make the Big 12 just such a loaded conference. I mean, to think about what it is now and bringing, Houston and the other new members, they all bring something, but bringing Houston, oh my gosh, that's just going to make it just a lot.
That's a stack conference. Yeah,
no doubt. So as y'all see, of course, I have Rockets pennants behind me, and I do have some Houston connections. I went my first 4 years of school in Houston. I don't really have much connection with U of H other than I love Hakeem the Dream and Clyde the Glide and those Fly Slamma Jamma teams. And so I personally, for nostalgia's sake, would love to see Houston kind of take it home. And it'd be a lot of fun. I also read a column just this morning from an old Houston sportswriter, John Lopez, who talked about the Final Four being in Houston this year.
Yeah.
And the potential of, 4 Texas teams potentially getting there. Like, obviously the Longhorns are pretty good. Baylor is good, as John says, has some problems on defense, but they're still a top 10 team in the country, or they were probably until the next poll. And A&M's not bad this year. So that would be interesting. I mean, you think of Texas as king football state, but really it's been basketball that's kind of been holding the banner up in this state.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Houston to get to the Final Four, but I feel like that's realistic. I think that they have what it takes. You just have to have everything go right. Like, you think it's going to happen, and then how many times does it just not happen for teams that you're like, oh no, they'll be there. I mean, I would love to see them get to that stage and see what that's like for them to be playing in Houston.
Right. Well, I'm sure after like the first weekend, we'll all take our brackets and we'll just do that, because that's what'll happen. That's March. So on the flip side of what's happening in Texas is what's happening in Oklahoma. And Kelly, the Big 12's 2 Oklahoma teams are not ranked, though the Cowboys, they have 7 conference wins under their belt, at least when I wrote this question. Have they played again? I don't remember.
They played Monday.
Yeah. So they should be in the field, I would think. John and I have talked about this. We feel like there's going to be a pretty good sampling of Big 12 teams in the March Madness field. So for OU, Porter Moser is in just his second year there as the Sooners head coach. So he's kind of in a rebuilding situation. Then you got Mike Boynton with just one NCAA trip to show for it in his 6 years in Stillwater. So my question is just, what's kind of the feeling among those Sooner and Cowboy fans about these guys?
Well, I definitely felt like going into the season, which I started the season covering Oklahoma State. So I kind of knew what the situation was with them. I felt like this is going to be a very important year for Mike Boynton because, he has a long-term contract and he's kind of locked in there for a while, a lot of money involved. Spot just does not want to not be on the and so I when things didn't start off great, I was a little bit concerned for him, but then as soon as I was taken off the beat and moved back to Tulsa, things got a lot better for them, which is great. But I feel like there's a lot of pressure to not just get to the tournament, but win some games there. And I don't know that they have that type of team. I think they have a good team. I don't think they have a great team. Not having Avery Anderson, that hurts, but they have some really good pieces, but they are very vulnerable to having bad nights. And, I think that they may still have some work left to do, with these last few games. They've dropped a couple in a row and they may need to win a couple more to get to that point. So I think that people are somewhat optimistic about the conclusion of this season, and that's going to sort of affect their opinion of Mike Boynton. Super well-liked guy, and I think he's an excellent recruiter. It just, I feel like some fans are not super high on him because everything, as we know, is based on tournament wins. So if you're not getting tournament wins, it's gonna be tough to keep fans on your side. With OU, still early in Porter Moser's time there. This season has kind of gone a weird direction, but then you see them beat Alabama like very soundly. So it's kind of a weird team. Definitely, I think if they had one or two more pieces, they would be a good team, but not quite there yet. But I think Porter has time. I think people are willing to be patient. He came in with a great reputation and a lot of success. And I think people are like, this could work out. He just needs some more time. At least that's maybe how I feel. Like it's still pretty early on for him, but they're not especially enjoyable to watch when they're struggling. And they had a few games there that I was like, I cannot watch this. And I've watched bad basketball really all season, and I would turn off their games. So, I think it's just been a weird season for the Oklahoma teams because really I think Oral Roberts is the best team in the state, and that's says kind of a lot about where the other teams are.
Sure, no doubt. I'm gonna float a theory out there and see what you think about it. So, do you feel like Oklahoma State, like once they didn't have the pressure of Kelly Hines coming to their games, I mean, they could say, oh, all right, now we can play basketball?
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's something to that. It's weird when you start a season and you just expect to see it through and there, especially when there's a lot of optimism with it, and then it takes a weird turn and then you're not part of it. It's like, I'm just going to move on with my life and do something else. But there were games that I watched that I was like, I kind of thought I'm not having to cover this, and then they started winning, and I'm like, okay, that's great for them.
Yeah, no doubt. So I cover the Baylor women, and just talking about women's basketball a little bit. So South Carolina continues to reign atop the poll. Although for the first time this season, the Gamecocks were not the unanimous number one this past week in the top 25. One voter gave a number one vote to Indiana, and the Big Ten has been strong this year in women's basketball. So I can kind of see that, although I don't know, South Carolina still hasn't lost. So if you had them number one all season, and then all of a sudden you change that, I don't know. It's an interesting thought, and I haven't even looked up to see who that voter was, but
it wasn't you.
It was not me. So here are the last 6 finishes in the NCAA tournament for Dawn Staley's program. So 6 years ago, national champs, Elite 8, Sweet 16, COVID, and they were 32-1 the COVID season, so they probably would have done all right. Final Four, and then national champs. So my question is this: has South Carolina maybe supplanted UConn as the premier program in women's college basketball? What do y'all think?
I think so, for sure. And I'm here for it. I love that. I think that it is a little bit of a different era in women's college basketball, because I mean, remember when UConn was winning every year and they were so dominant that it like irritated people who were like, oh, this is bad for the sport. Like, oh, sorry, there's a really good program.
Right.
So like, we're not to that point, but I definitely feel like, just like the finishes that you mentioned, I think that South Carolina is there at the top, but there are still other programs that you're like, no, they could be in the mix. Whereas with UConn, you're like, why even watch the tournament? They're going to win every game by like 20 points. It's not even enjoyable to watch because they're too good. But the games are still, even South Carolina's games are I think they're very entertaining because they play so well, but their maybe dominance isn't extreme. But I like that I think what I like most about women's college basketball is like the aggressive scheduling. So you're going to see like super high quality games throughout the season. No one's like afraid to like, hurt their record or any of those things. They just like want to be on a big stage. And I think South Carolina has embraced that. And I love when there are big personalities, and Dawn Staley, she doesn't back down from anything. She says exactly what she feels. I love that. So I'm a fan of that program. I think that they have another great team and they have a chance again, but they're not to the point of, oh, just right. Don't even fill out a bracket. They're going to win it, because I think there are other teams that could win it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talked about earlier on the podcast this year the fact that at 3 of the premier programs, UConn, South Carolina, and LSU, you have these coaches who will say just whatever the crap they want to say.
I love that. I love it.
I'm here for it, for sure. What do you say, John?
When you were reading off Dawn Staley's resume, it sounded a lot like Kim Mulkey's at Baylor.
Yeah. That was what she did at Baylor. You're right.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I think, there's becoming a little more parity. You don't want to see the same team win it every year. You want different teams competing for the title. And I watched a lot of that South Carolina LSU game on Super Bowl Sunday. And I mean, LSU, I thought they gave a really good effort, and they've got some pieces, but they're just not in the same league, really. I mean, when South Carolina wanted to take over, they took over and just pretty much controlled that game down the stretch. And but yeah, they're kind of the kingpins right now. But I think the women's tournament has reached a point where there could be an upset, and I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, no doubt. So I was off the Baylor women's beat for about 10 years, took myself off of it. That was a wise decision. And then I returned to it this season, and having returned to the top 25 voting, I will say this, that not only is there a little more parity, there's a lot more parity. And there's been weeks where I think 15, 16 teams in the top 25 lost a game that week. I mean, that's, I can remember when that was not normal. And so that speaks to just, there's good teams all over. And, yes, I think South Carolina is the best team in the country this year. And that program that, maybe everyone is chasing right now, but watch out for Stanford, watch out for UConn and these other teams at the top of the poll. Iowa is a really fun team with Caitlin Clark. They're just, fun to watch. So yeah, it should be an interesting NCAA tournament for sure. So finally, John, we referenced it earlier, but you just got back from a quick trip to Manhattan. Even talk about how quick it was. You flew up game day, which that is not normal. But was that your first trip to Manhattan for basketball?
It was my first since 1997.
97.
The first year of the Big 12.
There you go.
Yeah.
So they call that place the Octagon of Doom, which I love. And on TV, the game the other night, it certainly looked like there was just a raucous, intense atmosphere for that K-State Baylor game. You have also made multiple trips to Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence. And Kelly, I'm sure you have also been to a lot of cool basketball venues. So my question, what's the best basketball atmosphere that you guys have witnessed? And what's your bucket list place?
I guess I'll start here. Allen Fieldhouse, by far. They pack it every game. Those fans, they're really passionate about basketball. They know the game. They know when to get on players. They seem to know everything about the opposing team. So if somebody's really struggling, they'll get on that player. It's just a fantastic atmosphere. It was built in 1955. So it's, it's kind of, it's an old style that still has some bleacher type of seats. But yeah, that one's great. But, obviously it'd been a long time since I'd been to Bramlage Coliseum, and it's really a great venue. And what I like about it, it's just one tier of seats, and they go all the way down from the top, and the fans are really tight against the court, and it really creates a really good atmosphere. You're kind of like you're in a vortex there, sort of. Yeah, so it's a really good one. Now, Kelly, you probably hadn't been around this long, but the old Gallagher-Iba before they raised the roof,
yeah,
man, that place was just death to teams coming in there. I mean, the fans were on top of you. That roof was low. Eddie Sutton's teams were fantastic. I mean, you didn't have much of a chance of winning there. So that was really great. And, if they still pack the place, I'm sure, with all the improvements, it'd still be great. And as far as bucket list, I'd say Cameron Indoor. That's obviously an amazing
That's a stock
place.
answer. That's a good answer.
It is.
Yeah.
So,
Kelly,
yeah.
what do you say?
So I covered Oklahoma State a decade ago for 2 seasons. Those were the 2 seasons when Marcus Smart was there. And that was, those were really interesting seasons, but I went everywhere in the Big 12 those 2 years, except for West Virginia, because it's a little far. But my favorite trips during that time were definitely Allen Fieldhouse. But I like Bramlage a lot, but I really liked Hilton Coliseum when it's packed, when it's a big game. Really any arena that has the students close, has the fans close to the court, lets the media still sit close to the court. That's the dream.
Amen.
If you're like,
Dream.
if you're really far away from it, you're like, I am not really part of this, but it's like watching on TV, I guess. But I think, I've been to Cameron Indoor for a non-conference game. I've been to Hinkle. I've been to places that would be on my, or probably were on my bucket list, but if you're not there for like a really big game, it's definitely a different experience. So I think my bucket list is important games at those venues. The game that I went to at Cameron Indoor was one of the first games of the season. I was up there for a Tulsa football game against East Carolina, and it was cool, but you're like, I could see how this would be a lot more enjoyable if it was packed and people were really into the game. So I definitely would like to go to North Carolina game at Duke, but I like the newer arenas, but it's the old ones that have my heart, and covering games when it's a big game and you're close to the court, it's just a totally different experience. And I know it's so trendy now to put the media far away and have those seats close to the court for big donors, but I hate that.
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
great for the donors, I guess, but so often it's like an NBA game when you have people who have a lot of money but maybe aren't that invested in the game close to the court. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Oh, another one I really like is Wichita State's arena, the Roundhouse. I like that one a lot. That's a place I've been to a few times, and that's a pretty good one too.
Yeah, those are good answers. John and I have been fortunate enough to have covered some national championship games, both men's and women's basketball. And I will say, obviously, that does raise the level of intensity and, everything. I mean, that's, but at the same time, the atmosphere is great, but all those NCAA tournament like Final Four type games are in these giant, football arenas, and you lose something there, I think, with the atmosphere. I'll go back a few years on one of my favorites, and that was, John, you remember when A&M had G. Raleigh White?
Oh, yeah.
The Holler House is what they called it. That place, when they would fill it up, that was a pretty good atmosphere. I remember watching A&M play Kansas when Paul Pierce was at KU, and that place was lit, man. It was, the Aggies can get crazy. We know that. And then I will mention one other one that I was not at, but I just want to bring it up because I know, John, you always talked about it. And yes, this was in a football arena, but when Baylor played, when they played Duke at NRG Stadium down in Houston in the NCAA tournament, how many Baylor fans were there? It was maybe one of the best showings they've ever had.
I think it's close to 40,000.
That's
Baylor
just
fans.
Incredible for a basketball game. And wasn't that atmosphere pretty good?
Yeah, it really was, especially, for a football stadium. They really made it more basketball-like somehow. And it did help having all those Baylor fans there. Yeah.
So, little known fact, John does know this fact, but I was actually born in North Carolina, got to Texas as fast as I could, but my grandmother and my Nana, she's still alive. She lives in North Carolina, and I have visited UNC, and that court is awesome. I would love to see a game there. And I'm with y'all on Duke. Obviously, Cameron Indoor, that just feels like a bucket list kind of college basketball place. But so there's still time. Maybe we'll get there. So
I did want to mention, Kelly brought up Hinkle Fieldhouse, and it was really unique watching Baylor play 2 NCAA tournament games there in 2021, which wouldn't have happened except for COVID.
Yeah.
And that was pretty awesome to be there. And, just such an historic venue like that.
Yeah, no doubt. John, you were in the bubble. You were our bubble guy for like a month, weren't you?
Yes. Yes, it was very
Kelly, John went from Kansas City covering the Big 12 tournament, and he just drove over to Indianapolis, into Indiana, and we didn't see him for like a month.
Literally, it was a month.
Yeah. Your wife was happy to see you again.
Oh yeah.
So that's a book, John. You should write about that. Kelly, thanks for hopping on with us, and I hope you get to see some good college basketball soon.
It's got to be soon. It's got to be soon.
Yeah, with ORU or whoever. So, but always good to catch up, and appreciate your time.
Anytime, guys. Enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kelly.